Hi everyone, in this final video in the mini-series on fire and rehire, we are discussing shift patterns. So what we've talked about so far is that the government will introduce the concept of a restricted variation. And if an employer dismisses an employee for refusing to agree to a restricted variation, in the circumstances where they offer re-engagement, the employee will be deemed automatically unfairly dismissed. Now the government has launched consultation to try and ensure that the protection of the employee is balanced with the employer's needs for flexibility. And in the previous video, we focused on benefits in kind. In this final video, we're going to focus on shift patterns. And this is something I've been particularly concerned about because if there is a lack of flexibility around changing working hours and changing shifts, particularly in manufacturing production environments where it often isn't a 9 to 5 job, this could cause some significant issues in negotiations with employees. Now, this consultation is a lot more technical than payments and benefits in kind. The consultation is looking at what elements to changes in shift patterns could constitute a restricted variation. The consultation paper highlights that there's a variety of possible shift patterns. They will be set out very differently in contracts, and it can make it challenging to create common rules for those arrangements. And whilst the employer needs flexibility, changes could have a profound effect on the employee's life, and that's why those interests do need to be balanced. So any existing flexibility under the contract is not going to be affected by the new rules, and that does raise something fairly critical here as an employer. Prior to January 2027, when this is implemented, you may need to look at your contracts of employment and get them as flexible as possible. So that may mean defining a total number of working hours, but not the times of the shifts. So making it clear that they could be worked at any time on a 7-day period and subject to change on reasonable notice. In those circumstances, we're arguably not looking to make a variation to the contract in the future. We're actually exercising a power we have under the contract to change those working hours. Now, the government's proposed two options open to alternative views. Option one is to limit a restricted variation to shift changes from day to night working or vice versa, and weekday to weekend working. So that would mean an employer is free to change or propose a change and potentially dismiss and re-engage any change in hours except where those hours move from day to night or weekend to weekday working. So that would only affect very extreme variations and put those within the scope of the new rules. But again, the government recognises that there may be requirements to make those changes, and that may relate to different customer needs, production processes, the introduction of new machinery and equipment, which may create that need for flexibility going forwards. But that's option one, and essentially what would fall outside of that would not be a restricted variation and would not amount to an automatic unfair dismissal. Now, option two is to provide that no types of shift pattern changes are in scope of the restricted variation. So an employer could essentially do what they wanted in terms of varying the times of the shift to be worked, and that would not constitute a restricted variation. Again, there are still the ordinary unfair dismissal rules to apply, so the employer would have to show that they have a genuine business reason, that they consulted, and that ultimately the dismissal was fair. What I would stress here is that we're talking about a change in the times of the shift patterns, not the total number, a reduced total number of hours worked or a reduction in pay. That would fall within the definition of a restricted variation because that would result in direct financial loss to the employee. And now the government has said that they will likely propose option one to proceed with, so there will be a limited number of shift changes which would fall within the scope of a restricted variation, but again, that's subject to consultation. So that consultation closes on the 1st of April 2026. Final regulations will be laid before Parliament at that point. And again, I stress that the government is still able to add any alternative or additional wording, so to create further changes that might amount to restricted variations. But the suggestion is that nothing else will be added before the provisions come into force in January 2027. So clearly a bit of a waiting time now in terms of the consultation and what the final regs will look like. As I said earlier, though, the key for employers now is to look at the contracts and try and get as much flexibility in as possible if you know that you might need to change working hours in the future. If you do need any further assistance on this or anything to do with employment law generally, please get in touch. Visit the website chadwicklawrence.co.uk or email employmenthub@chadlaw.co.uk. Thank you.